He was born clutching a clot of blood. He would conquer the largest empire in history. One single man rose from absolute nothing, with no name and no power, to rule 1/5 of the entire known world in one lifetime. Whole cities were burned and wiped completely off the map, leaving only ash and ruins, and some places never recovered 800 years later. But before any of this, he was a hunted and beaten slave, starving and chained completely alone in the freezing, empty wilderness. His army moved across the land like a wall, and entire nations surrendered just from seeing the dust rising far on the horizon. His name was Genghis Khan, and you need to stay until the very end for real facts that honestly sound completely impossible. Around the year 1162, a boy named Temujin was born, clutching a strange dark clot of blood tightly in his tiny newborn fist. His father, Yesugei, raised the boy hard and cold, teaching him to ride, to hunt, and to survive across the endless open steppe. But one day, a rival Tatar tribe invited his father to a peaceful feast, and during the meal, they quietly slipped a deadly, slow-acting poison into his drink. The boy heard the news and raced home across the plains as fast as he could, but he arrived far too late. His father was gone and everything collapsed. With the father dead and buried in the ground, the entire clan turned on them and abandoned them, leaving the mother and her young children completely alone to die. For years, they survived only on wild roots, river fish, and small rodents, barely scraping and clawing their way through every brutal and freezing steppe winter together. The long years of starvation and loss slowly hardened him into something cold and dangerous, a teenager who already understood power, fear, and survival far better than grown men. To take full control of his own family, he quietly removed his older half-brother, and from that single dark night on, nobody around him ever dared question his authority again. At just 17, the powerful Taichiud clan captured Temujin and locked his neck and wrists inside a heavy wooden kangwe, dragging him between camps like an animal. For days, he was passed between families as a prisoner to guard, until one night, a brave and kind man risked his own life to secretly set the young man free. He fled across the dark steppe, crossed freezing rivers, and hid for days among the reeds, hunted and completely alone, until he finally reached safety and his own people. Free again and growing into a formidable young warrior, he rode to honor a childhood promise and claimed his bride, a composed young woman named Borte from the Ungarat tribe. Borte brought with her a rare black sable fur coat as a dowry gift, and Temujin used it brilliantly to buy the protection and loyalty of one of the most powerful warlords on the steppe. But that alliance made old enemies move. The Merkit tribe carried a blood debt against his family, and one night they came silently across the dark plain to collect it. By morning, Borte was gone, taken by the Merkit tribe deep into the steppe, while Temujin had barely escaped alone into the hills in the freezing darkness of that night. The rage he carried after that day was not hot and wild, it was cold, patient, and absolute, and he swore he would call in every alliance and get her back at any cost. He called in every favor an ally had, raised a war party, and rode hard through the night to crush the Merkits and tear his stolen wife back out of their hands. He found Borte alive in the ruined enemy camp, and the moment they reached each other, both knew that nothing and no one would ever tear them apart again. For years, his closest friend was Jamuka, a brilliant rival warlord, and the two swore a sacred blood brother oath to stand together as one for the rest of their lives. But two men cannot rule one steppe. Ambition poisoned their bond. The brotherhood shattered, and the sworn brothers slowly turned into the deadliest of enemies across the grasslands. The war between the two former brothers tore the entire steppe apart, tribe against tribe, as both men fought for total command over every clan in the land. In the end, Jamuka was defeated and brought low, and with his last great rival gone, no power left on the open steppe could stand against him. One by one, the proud tribes of the steppe bent the knee, laid down their banners at his feet, and accepted this once starving outcast as their single supreme master. Then, In the year 1206, a vast gathering of all the Mongols raised him up on white felt and gave him a new and terrifying name, Genghis Khan. The hunted slave was gone forever. In his place stood the supreme ruler of all the Mongols, and he was only just getting started. By 1211, the master of the steppe turned his cold eyes south toward the vast and fabulously rich Jin Empire of northern China, hidden behind its famous walls. For years, the proud Jin had demanded tribute and looked down on the Mongols as savages, but now their arrogant envoys stood before a man who feared nothing. He poured his horsemen through the mountain passes into China, and entire valleys of farmers and villages saw the dust rise and knew that their world was ending. But the towering stone walls of the Chinese cities were something the Mongols had never faced, and at first those endless ramparts seemed completely impossible to break. So he did something brilliant. He captured Chinese engineers and turned their own war machines against them, hurling fire and stone until the great walls finally cracked. When a city fell, its gates were torn open, and the conquered streets were stripped of silk, gold, and jade that flowed in endless caravans back to the steppe. Endless caravans of looted silk and gold rolled back across the plains, making the once starving Mongols richer and more powerful than they had ever dreamed possible. The empire that once called him a savage now lay broken and burning beneath his banners, and the boy born in a poor tent had humbled all of northern China. Far to the west lay the wealthy Khwarezmian Empire, a land of golden trading cities like Bukhara and Samarkand, overflowing with silk, spice, and Silk Road riches. In 1218, the Khan sent a peaceful trade caravan and envoys there, offering friendship and commerce, wanting trade and gold far more than another long and bloody war. But the arrogant Shah of Khwarizm seized the caravan, called the envoys spies, and executed them, sending their goods back as an open and deliberate insult. When the news reached the Khan, he did not shout or rage. He went cold and silent, and in that terrible stillness he decided that an entire empire would burn. He launched a massive invasion, even marching part of his army through a deadly desert that everyone believed no army could ever possibly cross, to appear where least expected. One by one, the proud cities fell. Bukhara was taken, its defenders shattered, its great buildings set ablaze beneath the black smoke rising over the minarets. Riding into the great mosque of Bukhara, he reportedly told the terrified survivors that he was the punishment of God, sent because of their rulers' terrible sins. Samarkand and other cities suffered even worse. Some were emptied so completely that the streets fell silent forever, and a few never truly recovered to this day. The proud Shah who had started it all fled in terror across his collapsing empire, hunted from city to city until he died alone and broken on a cold island. By 1227, the Khan was old and tired, yet still at war, leading one final campaign against the Tangut kingdom that had dared to defy and betray him. During that last campaign, he fell from his horse and was badly injured, and his tough old body, worn down by a lifetime of war, finally began to fail him. Surrounded by his loyal generals, the conqueror of the world quietly passed away, and his death was kept a strict secret so that his enemies would not rejoice. His body was carried in silence toward the sacred mountains of his homeland, guarded by a small escort sworn never to reveal where their great Khan would rest. To hide the grave forever, legend says they killed everyone who saw the procession, then drove huge herds of horses back and forth to erase every last trace. To this very day, after 800 years, nobody on earth knows where Genghis Khan is buried, and his tomb remains one of history's greatest mysteries. By the time the Mongol conquests ended, his family ruled the largest connected land empire in all of human history, far bigger than Rome or Alexander ever built. And here is a fact that sounds impossible. Scientists estimate that roughly 1 in every 200 men alive on Earth today is a direct descendant of this single man. Though he himself could not read or write, he created a written script, a brutal code of laws, a postal relay system, and even guaranteed protection for envoys. Under his fierce peace, the Silk Road became safe, and ideas, goods, and inventions flowed between East and West like never before in the entire ancient world. The wars killed so many people that forests grew back over emptied farmland, and some scientists believe it pulled enough carbon from the air to slightly cool the planet. From a starving, hunted boy to the man who reshaped the world, Genghis Khan left a mark on history that, 800 years later, has never been erased. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more legendary stories from history's darkest and greatest figures.